Resident Evil Outbreak takes place over 5 scenarios ranging from the early hours of the Raccoon City destruction incident to its last seconds. The connections between scenarios are mostly unclear. Characters: Kevin, Mark, Jim, George, David, Alyssa, Yoko, Cindy. Side characters: Bob, Will, Arthur, Raymond, Dorian, Eric, Elliot, Harry. Minor characters: Aaron, Chuck, Sean. Outbreak starts inside Jay's bar, around a day after Hunk's team is wiped out by the G-mutated William Birkin. The attack ended up unleashing the deadly T-virus into the sewers. Curious rats and cockroaches drank the green media coming from broken vials, thus becoming infected. The sewer's ecological system collapsed soon after due to a battle for food between T-mutated rats and cockroaches, with rats being pushed out into the city's water reservoir, contaminating drinking water with the T-virus. At Jack's bar, 10 ordinary people are drinking, eating, thinking, solving crossword puzzles, sleeping, working, and running away. Most aren't paying attention to the Raccoon News Network coverage on a disturbance at the football game between Raccoon Sharks and Old Court. Thunders apparently caused by a single spectator. Even though 50 police officers were sent to the scene, no one seems to care about it. Bob, Mark's friend, is not feeling well for reasons unknown. He doesn't want to eat, he's coughing, and trying to get some rest. Meanwhile, a new, strange customer enters the bar. At first, he is thought to be drunk, shaking and barely able to walk. He is greeted by Will, the bar's cook and bartender, only for him to be attacked seconds later with a bite to the neck. Now the street outside is in complete chaos, with people running and screaming for help, among them others like the drunk guy, displaying cannibalistic behavior. The group runs upstairs in search of a way out. Bob's condition worsens and now he is unable to walk on his own. When they reach the building's rooftop, Bob can no longer move anymore. After a short talk with Mark, he can either take his own life or turn into a zombie. After listening to the announcement, the survivors head to the neighboring apartment building by jumping the space between them and the bar. They find an elevator that leads to the building's first floor and then head to the chaotic city streets. The survivors run into Raymond Douglas, RPD's acting chief. After a short talk, they decide to help Douglas in blocking up the street with police cars. With the zombies still coming through the barricades, Douglas leads the survivors into an alley only to find a wooden double door blocking the path to the canal. After blasting it with his shotgun, Raymond tries to buy the survivors time by killing the zombies that were following them. He's attacked by surprise after having spotted a tanker nearby. As he's about to die, his last words are to instruct the survivors to leak the gas and set fire to it to stop the coming horde. The survivors light the gas and jump into the canal leading to the sewers. They find a manhole soon after, which leads them in front of the Apple Inn Hotel, where Dorian and 2 other survivors wait. After a brief talk, Dorian takes the survivors into his Raccoon SWAT van, but is forced to stop just a few meters away due to a crater on the road. At Main Street, Elliot, Eric, and Harry are carrying out an emergency operation. Blow up the street using explosives in order to destroy a horde of thousands of zombies. The operation ends in success. Later, RPD reinforcements arrive to provide assistance and help with the injured. At dawn, U.S. Army troops arrive in the city's limits, with the excuse of radioactive waste. On September 24, the city is placed under quarantine. Below freezing point. Below freezing point takes place inside the source of Raccoon's tragedy, Umbrella's underground laboratory. Yoko has led survivors to the train tunnel at the bottom of the lab. The survivors are confronted by an Umbrella researcher named Monica, who demands Yoko's Umbrella ID card at gunpoint. Monica flees with a carrying case containing the G-virus, and the survivors are left to fend for themselves. The Hive takes place in the Raccoon General Hospital, which will later be visited by Carlos Oliveira in Resident Evil 3. The survivors are holed up on the hospital's 3rd floor while a doctor named Hirsch attempts to restore power to the elevator. No sooner is power restored, however, when Hirsch is attacked by a writhing, coherent mass of leeches. The leeches swarm over his body, transforming him into the nigh-unstoppable Leech Man, who pursues the survivors throughout the hospital as they seek to escape through the lower levels. Hellfire. Hellfire takes place inside the Apple Inn Hotel, a 3-story hotel built around a central courtyard. As the survivors seek refuge in the courtyard, the hotel's boiler explodes, damaging the door to the street and trapping the survivors in the hotel. The survivors navigate their way through the building, which has been transformed into an inferno by the explosion. Decisions is the final scenario in Outbreak and takes place at Raccoon University. At a rescue station, George sees a note from his friend Peter, asking for his help at the university. George and the survivors make their way there. Zombies are humans afflicted with the cannibal disease, an illness caused by the T-virus, a bioweapon originally developed by Dr. James Marcus, one of the founding members of the Umbrella Corporation. Despite having minimal organ function and a deceased-like appearance, these creatures are not reanimated corpses but living humans who have been infected and transformed by the virus mutations. Zombie dog is a term referring to domesticated canines infected with the T-virus through its secondary method, namely the ingestion of infected food or organisms. It should be noted that they are separate from the Cerberuses. The latter was created specifically as a bioorganic weapon, while zombie dogs are viewed and treated as unintended side effects of T-virus dispersal and are thus classified as irregular mutants. Like their BOW relatives, the zombie dogs retain much of their former agility with a noticeable increase in durability and aggression. In most cases, potential prey should listen for the sound of padding paws as a clue to their presence, with a growling warning that it has become aware of prey and is preparing to attack. They will let out a pained yelp when killed. Akin to the canine-related T-virus mutation is a general necrosis in their left eye orbit, leaving their left eye visible bulge out of their otherwise savage but proportional facade, making for an even more fearsome appearance. Nicholas was a citizen of Raccoon City. He was infected with the T-virus and roamed the city as a zombie during its destruction incident. On September 23rd, a modified Epsilon strain of T-virus was released into Raccoon City sewers. By the following day, it had contaminated the drinking water, causing tens of thousands to mutate into zombies. Nicholas was, however, infected through direct contact with a zombie, suffering a deep bite wound to his left shoulder. He mutated as a result of infection. Nicholas was one of a number of infected that attacked Jack's bar. G is the name given to any mutant created through the infection processes of the Golgotha virus, whether as the patient zero or their descendants. For convenience, only these descendant will be referred to as G here. These G come in two varieties. The first is the immediate offspring of the patient zero, which mature from embryos into tumor-scarred humanoid forms if rejected by a human parasitic host. The second is their own descendants, which remain in embryonic form and cannot develop further. The only known occurrence of G was during the Raccoon City destruction incident that took place in September 1998. Monica, a researcher on the G-virus R&D team, was parasitized by a G embryo that crawled down her throat when she was attacked by a giant moth in the nest. Not genetically compatible, it rejected Monica and tore out of her chest. The creature matured into its adult form within minutes, but was soon killed by a group of survivors on the surface. Dr. William Birkin, who infected himself with the virus after being shot, hunted for human hosts to carry his embryos. The only confirmed parasitism was that of his own daughter, Sherry, who was a genetic match. Though he also interacted with Brian Irons and Ben Bertolucci, among presumably others, it is not known if he parasitized them or simply killed them. During the events of the Raccoon City outbreak, the G-virus would leak into the city's sewer system. This resulted in G-infested cesspools forming in various areas and tunnels in the sewers. These G-infected areas developed tumorous growths that spawned multiple imperfect G-forms and their embryos, which then ran rampant through the tunnels. Giant spider is a blanket term used for any spider that has been infected due to the T-virus in an unplanned manner, an irregular mutant. They are different from the web spinner in the sense that the web spinner BOW were experimented from the start, while the wild spiders simply mutated on contact. The giant spiders, like other T-virus-infected spiders, produce little spiders, which live on their mother's back. If the back of giant spider wasn't blasted by powerful weapons, little spiders won't appear. Unlike the web spinner, these irregular mutant spiders had kept the ability to create a web for trapping prey, which logically made them much more akin to the black tiger. The giant spiders frequented in the sewers of Raccoon City, where they were infected during the Raccoon City destruction incident when the T-virus was leaked into the sewers. In a similar manner, giant spiders populated the sewers of Sheena Island 2 months later during its own viral outbreak, when T-virus-laced chemicals mixed into the sewage. The giant leech was a leech infected with the T-virus that took up residence within the waterways beneath the Raccoon General Hospital. Apparently different from the leeches James Marcus was working with, this leech was, like its smaller kin, extremely sensitive to fire. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, a group of survivors attempted to escape the hospital by using the sewer, unaware of the giant leech's presence. They accidentally rammed it with a boat, causing it to become enraged and attack. It was killed during the fight. During the outbreak that claimed Raccoon City, the doctors of the Raccoon General Hospital observed that the leeches of the sewer systems had been infected with the T-virus. These leeches also displayed some hive mind characteristics similar to the progenitor leech's mimicry Marcus, but rather than bonding together to create a human form, they would instead swarm a host, drain them of their blood, and imbue them with such abilities. This new abomination was somewhat intelligent, crawling through ventilation ducts to surprise its prey. It could be brought down by intense heat, though the leeches would not fall for the same trick twice. These leeches, like Marcus, served a queen. This queen reacted differently to the T-virus and its size increased, making it 3 to 5 meters long. It was eventually killed by a group of survivors on their way out of the Raccoon General Hospital via a sewer exit. The Hunter Gamma, development code, MA124, model of Hunter was developed by Umbrella Europe as part of a reinvestigation into amphibian-based BOW, which failed 10 years earlier with Dr. Marcus Lurker. It was nicknamed the Frogger by its development team. The Hunter Gamma was developed based on information retrieved from the American branch's Hunter Alpha model. Contrary to the American design method, the Hunter Gamma involved human DNA being bonded with a fertilized amphibian egg with the T-virus. Though this method worked, the resulting creatures had several flaws that made them impractical for battlefield use, such as a sensitivity to heat and their vulnerable mandibles being exposed when they attacked a target. In 1998, Umbrella ordered the destruction of numerous batches of this variant due to its perceived uselessness as a weapon. One researcher who had grown emotionally attached to the hunters under his care defied this order, and bribed a sewer manager in Raccoon City to allow him and some of his associates to move the hunters there to continue training and evaluation. He hoped to prove their worth and bargain with Umbrella's European branch to continue development. Though they were docile and friendly to the researcher and his associates, they effortlessly and violently killed at least 2 random sewer workers that happened to stumble upon them. These hunters were still in the sewer during the Raccoon City destruction incident. At least 2 of them were captured and sedated by the Raccoon General Hospital staff. Carlos Oliveira, a corporal in the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, inadvertently released them while trying to synthesize a T-virus reagent for Jill Valentine. By October 1st, a pack had established their hunting ground in a pond at Raccoon Park. A clawless version of the Gamma was also being stored in the water treatment facility underneath Raccoon University at the same time. Quickly breaking out of their storage capsules also on October 1st, these hunters reacted well to the damp, subterranean environment and the pools of water in the plant. While being considered improper for a BOW due to the conditions necessary for survival, Umbrella nonetheless continued to sell the Gamma model as late as 2002, where a number were sold into the hands of Javier Hidalgo. Additionally, by May 2002 there was at least 1 other subspecies of Gamma created, albeit accidentally. At Umbrella's Atlantic Waste Disposal Facility, a preference by management for accelerating research over worker safety or facility maintenance resulted in the creation of the Glimmer variety of Hunter, which escaped into the flooded lower levels of the facility. Named for their luminous red eyes, these creatures gained the ability to vomit powerful acid on their opponents at the cost of being sensitive to light. This subspecies was subsequently rendered extinct when the facility was destroyed in September 2002. The Hunter R code, MA125R, is a subspecies of the Hunter BOW, developed by William Birkin's research team at the Raccoon City Underground Laboratory. While it closely resembles the original Hunter Alpha model in appearance, it features several distinct characteristics, most notably smaller claws and pronounced spikes along its back. The Hunter project was conceived by William Birkin in 1981 as a solution to the T-virus's high rejection rate and its failure to achieve a 100% mortality rate in hosts. The first successful prototype was aptly named Hunter Alpha Alpha, and its variants continued to be used as late as 2014 with the latest subspecies being the Hunter Delta Delta. The leech man was a mass of T-virus-infected leeches that used a parasitized human body as a means of movement. Only one is known to have existed, and it was destroyed in the Raccoon General Hospital in September 1998. The leech man and similar mounds of leeches in the outbreak are comparable to mimicry marcus, though they function differently. An unidentified strain of the T-virus made its way through the sewers of Raccoon City in the weeks leading up to Operation Nestrecker. One of the mutants resulting from this localized outbreak was the giant leech, which later asexually produced a colony of its own. These leeches were studied by Umbrella USA, who noted their tendency to stick together to form large bodies, drawing comparisons with reports of the mimicry marcus. As the outbreak spread, the leeches made their way into the hospital itself and began directly feeding on people, particularly hunting those with wounds. One such victim was Dr. Hirsch, whom the leeches completely covered and killed while blood draining. Rather than leave his body behind, the leeches clung to him to maintain their shape, using his body like a puppet to move around faster. Lickers are an irregular mutant resulting from a rare secondary metamorphosis of zombies infected with an unnamed variant of the epsilon strain. The transformation typically affects zombies that have consumed large quantities of biomass to sustain their metabolism. Lickers are noted for their exposed and expanded brains, lack of skin and eyes, extreme sensitivity to sound, substantive and newly reformed muscle structure and reformed bone structure, large talons and eponymous barbed tongues, the latter of which are capable of piercing flesh and decapitating prey. They should not be confused with crimson heads, which are the result of the V-act effect from a separate T-virus strain. The earliest known lickers appeared in the latter half of 1998 and were mutated from humans infected with an unnamed T-virus strain. Lickers were initially believed to be a wild form of tyrant when first documented by Umbrella researchers and were kept as test subjects in Birkin's lab beneath Umbrella's chemical plant. These subjects would eventually escape after the lab was raided by an Umbrella security service squad led by Hunk. The monster plant grew in Nest's duct. It was weakened by V-jolt by a group of survivors to gain access to the nearby ladders. The giant moth was an experimental bio-organic weapon developed by Umbrella. They should not be confused with the moth, another infected insect, which is smaller in size. Giant moth research was conducted in the Nest underground facility. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, at least one moth escaped its chamber and made the B5F computer room its nest, using the facility's air conditioning system to hunt in the main shaft and bring prey back. Another giant moth was present on Sheena Island during its own biohazardous outbreak. Like its fellow, it also experienced the same problem regarding its exaggerated proportions. The research into moth-based BOW was a failure in this experiment. Mutating to a larger size normally did not keep them in proportion. Making their wings strong enough only to hover over the ground, however, they did also develop the ability to spit poison on prey as a means of compensating. Scissor tails were earwigs infected by the T-virus. The scissor tail attacks by stinging with its scissor-like tail, hence its nickname, infecting its victims with an innate and potentially lethal toxin, or by tackling and then biting the victim repeatedly, which typically induces profuse bleeding. The scissor tails are very strong. According to a Raccoon Today article published in Raccoon City, campers in the nearby Arkley Mountains encountered one in early September 1998 that attacked their hunting dog, which spent 2 weeks in the veterinarian's care after the attack. An entomologist at Raccoon University, Graham Barrows, scoffed off the idea of such a creature existing following an interview after the attack. An irregular mutant that seems to be a mutated earwig, it uses its newfound abilities granted to it by the T-virus to hunt prey and induce bleeding and in some cases poisoning. There are 2 kinds of scissor tail, brown and blue, and both seem to have different capabilities. The brown scissor tail is the larger of the 2 types and will induce bleeding upon unsuspecting victims. The blue scissor tail, while slightly smaller, will induce poison and bleeding on its victims. Both types do this either by stabbing their prey using their sharp tails or tackling and biting their prey. Both types of scissor tails have mutated to the point where they have grown out of their wings. The wings, while present, are incapable of flight as they did not scale well with the scissor tail's mass increase and are seemingly vestigial now. When they feel threatened, they will burrow underground in an attempt to escape their attacker. The suspended is the name given to an unnamed civilian who was infected with the T-virus during the 1998 Raccoon City destruction incident. Following her zombification within the Apple Inn, She underwent a freak mutation into a form similar to Licker's, but retaining a more human form. She was killed by a group of outbreak survivors in the Apple Inn Hotel. Wasps of various species were infected with T-virus strains. Wasps around Arkley County were infected with these viruses in a number of manners. Mutant wasps were created in May 1998 after feeding on the pollen of plant 42. Due to the accidental outbreak at the Arkley laboratory, the staff were unable to control a mutant wasp nest, with at least one man succumbing to the poison. A wasp nest at a nearby abandoned hospital was also contaminated by suckling on the nectar of the monster plant, Dorothy. In Raccoon City, wasp nests were infected by unknown means. One nest was based within Raccoon University's ventilation tower and was marked by Dr. Peter Jenkins as a source for V poison, a critical ingredient in creating daylight. Thanatos was a unique tyrant specimen created by rogue Umbrella Corporation scientist Greg Mueller. During the Raccoon City destruction incident, Greg released Thanatos in defiance of Umbrella's mass production of tyrants. As with other BOW, Thanatos was named after an entity in Greco-Roman mythology, in this case the Greek god of death. Greg created Thanatos using research and combat data on the T-103 model. However, he wanted a tyrant optimized for killing and preferred the physical size of the prototype T-002 combat model. During the outbreak, Greg formed a partnership with Peter Jenkins at Raccoon University with the offer of helping him create a vaccine for the T-virus. T-blood, blood from a creature infected with the T-virus, was offered by Greg to be obtained to create the vaccine. Greg had it in mind to get the blood from Thanatos. However, Peter discovered that Greg was helping him create the vaccine purely due to a personal vendetta and that Greg actually sought to use the cure as leverage against Umbrella. As such, Peter refused to continue researching with him, and thus T-blood from Thanatos was rendered useless. Thanatos, however, would not remain dormant. An Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service team was sent by Umbrella as part of Operation Emperor's Mushroom. The objective was to enter the grounds of the Raccoon University and retrieve the tyrant, or if the creature was too strong to contain, kill it and retrieve the remains. The operation was ready to go ahead from 0535 to 0635 on October 1, 1998, the very last moments available for the company. Already aware of Umbrella's intent, Greg released his creation with the intention of wiping out the team. Sometime around the time of the mission's initiation, the UBCS team, comprised of 5 mercenaries including Carl, Dustin, and Nikolai Zinoviev, made contact with the creature in the back square. Keeping their distance, the team continued to open submachine gun fire in an attempt to take it down. The tactic failed to take it down, and the other component of the plan, Nikolai collecting the desired T-blood from behind, led it on a homicidal rampage, killing the groundside components of the team. Thanatos then carried off the body of one of the mercenaries to Greg for his researching purposes. Nikolai then began preparations for another encounter. Should it take place, Thanatos then proceeded to pursue a ragtag group of refugees throughout the university. It failed, and the survivors managed to escape its grasp. In fact, the survivors temporarily managed to knock Thanatos out with an electric shock, taking the pod with T-blood with them. After Greg's assassination by Nikolai, and the activation of the C4 charges he spent the time in hiding setting up, Thanatos again tried and failed to kill the survivors while they fled. While they escaped to the temporary safety of the back square, the C4 went off, destroying a section of the university building and bringing the ceiling down around Thanatos. Though this severely injured it and cost it an arm, it also caused it to mutate into its super tyrant form, known as Thanatos R. After its mutation, Thanatos resumed its chase for the survivors outside the university. As they made their way to evacuation, Thanatos cut them off. Though it could have easily overpowered and killed the group, their resilience proved an advantage. Still, Thanatos quickly resumed its chase at full strength. At the front square, Thanatos intercepted the survivors for the third and final time, by either using firearms or inserting a sample of the daylight antigen, a vaccine to the T-virus made with Thanatos' very blood, into an ample shooter dropped by a dead soldier and shooting it into Thanatos. The survivors defeated it and escaped the city. However, Thanatos' body may have had the means to combat daylight. Alyssa Ashcroft. Alyssa is a newspaper journalist working for the local paper. With a vigorous sense of curiosity, she has an insatiable appetite for collecting various bits of information. This is the source of her power. With a pushy and strong personality, she is a sore loser who often clashes with others. But even though she is stuck on herself, she does take care of her fellow man. Bob was a Raccoon City security guard, working for Scutum, Latin for shield, security, and a friend of Mark Wilkins. When the zombie outbreak reached uncontrollable levels on Wednesday, September 23, 1998, Bob was already on the verge of complete infection, feeling the same intense hunger the already succumbed victims felt. When a zombie entered Jack's bar, the unsuspecting bartender, Will, was attacked. Bob fell unconscious as the zombie arrived, preventing Mark from helping Will. Though infected, Bob has no visible injuries and appears oblivious to any strange events that may have caused such, suggesting that he was one of the many citizens of Raccoon City infected through tainted drinking water. Cindy Lennox, a waitress at Jay's bar. Cindy is a popular person because of her unbreakable, bright smile. Whether it's her nature or the environment, she's full of a service spirit and always thinks of other people over herself. Even in a severe situation, she unexpectedly gathers her courage and adapts to the reality of a cruel society. David King, a quiet plumber. David doesn't speak at all about his past, but it's not because he's unfriendly. He just seems to be a man of few words who only speaks when necessary. With sharp eyesight and deft movements of his knife, he can prove his worth getting around in a scene of bloodshed. Dr. Hirsch was a medical doctor at Raccoon General Hospital who chose to stay and treat the sick and wounded for as long as possible. He is the last surviving member of the hospital's staff and, upon realizing the futility of the situation, he attempts to escape alongside the survivors. He appears to be of Indian descent and has a British accent. A group of survivors encountered Dr. Hirsch when they sought shelter inside the hospital. He explained to the survivors that the hospital was no longer a safe place to stay, and that they should escape as soon as he could find a way to repair the elevator. Upon restoring power to the elevator, Hirsch made his way back to the survivors, only to be attacked by what appeared to be a corpse infested with leeches. As he attempted to escape by climbing over a makeshift barricade, he fell, causing the injury on his left hand to bleed profusely. Upon regaining his composure, he realized his wounded hand had attracted the leeches, sending them into a frenzy. He screamed as the leeches overwhelmed him. His body was used by the leeches as a base for their form, moving him like a marionette in search of other survivors in order to feed on their blood. The leeches that controlled him were killed in the fixed-temperature laboratory, when the survivors managed to lure them into a trap, boiling them alive. Once the leeches had died, Dr. Hirsch's lifeless body fell to the ground, wherein the survivors finally learned of his grim fate. Dr. Greg Mueller was an umbrella researcher known for his rebellion against the company in 1998. Dr. Mueller worked at some point in the Umbrella Corporation Development Center in Raccoon City. He was already involved in the T-Virus project by 1993, acting as the banker in an illegal human research trial conducted at a hospital in the Arkley Mountains, where patients were infected with a T-virus variant with anti-carcinogenic properties. Alongside his work with Umbrella in other locations, Mueller also worked at Raccoon University. In 1996, he used a fellow Umbrella employee, Yoko Suzuki, in T-virus trials. He then performed an operation on her to affect her memories, which took until October 1998 to reverse. Raccoon University, lying on top of unused facilities, became a prime space for research and storage of bioweaponry. It was here that the Thanatos project began development as an experimental next step following the mass production of the T-103 series. In August 1998, Mueller objected to Umbrella's interest in cloning Thanatos for mass production and began working against the company. Partnering with Dr. Peter Jenkins, a Raccoon University professor, the two developed a vaccine effective even against Umbrella's modified Epsilon strain, which they dubbed Daylight to cover his tracks. Mueller told Jenkins that he was a former chief researcher for Umbrella, likely for the Tyrant Project, and had been smuggled a sample of the T-virus by a colleague still in the company, rather than using it to treat the then slowly expanding viral outbreak within the city. Mueller wanted it as leverage against Umbrella, threatening to destroy the T-virus project if they did not leave him and Thanatos alone. After the modified Epsilon strain entered Raccoon City's drinking water, tens of thousands mutated into zombies within hours. Both Mueller and Jenkins remained in the university while their colleagues succumbed. Later on, Mueller executed Jenkins to tie up loose ends. Aware that Umbrella would take advantage of the outbreak to send an armed team after him, Mueller decided to activate Thanatos and gave it clear instructions. The BOW responded by massacring a unit of the UBCS Charlie team, leaving only Sergeant Nikolai Zinoviev alive. As day slowly broke, Mueller discovered that a group of survivors had become aware of daylight through Jenkins' covert betrayal and had succeeded in creating multiple samples of daylight. He threatened to order Thanatos to kill them, but was then shot in the head by Sergeant Zinoviev, who subsequently activated C4 charges to destroy the building. George Hamilton, a doctor who works at Raccoon City Hospital. George is a first-class surgeon. He doesn't exactly take the lead and call the shots, but he does possess a cooperative spirit and the power to naturally acquire the trust of others. Harry was an officer of the Raccoon Police Department. He assisted in the evacuation of several survivors from the besieged precinct with the use of a tactical van. His fate following the evacuation of the survivors on 27th to 28th remains unknown. When the T-virus contaminated Raccoon City's water supply, tens of thousands of people mutated into zombies on Wednesday, September 23rd. The RPD was ill-prepared to tackle the crisis, but attempted to do so by sending out groups of officers to key choke points within the city, such as Main Street, whilst also evacuating people to the Raccoon police station of which they had intended to fortify and defend. Harry accompanied officers Eric and Elliot and received orders to enact clean-up operation, which, if successful, would annihilate thousands of zombies and curb the immediate threat. The three blockaded Main Street and began placing explosive charges across the road whilst more and more zombies continued to congregate. The zombies finally broke through the police barricade as Eric finalized priming the explosives for detonation, overwhelming and killing both him and Elliot. Unprepared for such a situation, outnumbered and cut off from the detonator, Harry could only retreat to an adjacent footbridge. He was joined by several survivors fleeing from Jack's bar, who then retrieved the detonator and set off the explosives, destroying several thousand infected in the process. When an RPD relief force made their way into the area, Harry left to perform other tasks in an RPD tactical van. What his actions involved over the next few days is unknown, but around September 27th to 28th, he encountered Officer Rita Phillips, who asked for his assistance in evacuating the police station. They arrived only to find a handful of survivors, with most of the RPD members having already been killed or infected. Whether or not Harry and Rita succeeded in escaping Raccoon City, Arkley County, and the exclusion zone is unknown. Jim Chapman, a subway employee. Jim is a friendly and cheerful fellow, but exposes his cowardice and narrow-mindedness. Event though he means no harm, he talks too much and invites frowns of disgust from those around him. However, he has powers of intuition and is very good at solving puzzles. Kevin Ryman is a policeman who works for the Raccoon City Police Department. He has superior athletic abilities and is an outstanding shot. A good fellow all around. He's also a dyed-in-the-wool optimist who doesn't dwell on small things. His happy-go-lucky, blissful personality sometimes works against him, since he has failed the STARS selection process twice. Mark Wilkins, currently working for a security company in Raccoon City. Mark is a Vietnam War veteran. Over 50 years old, his robust strength has not dimmed at all. He has tasted emptiness of war, and there is a side to him that is mentally fragile. Now, more than anything, he just wants to live in peace. Raymond Douglas was the deputy chief of the Raccoon Police Department. He was killed during evacuation efforts early into the Raccoon City destruction incident on Wednesday, September 23rd. Shortly after the T-virus threat was realized, Raymond Douglas was one of several RPD officers responsible for aiding the evacuation of hundreds of civilians during the fall of Raccoon City. Involved with the helicopter evacuation efforts taking place just north of Raccoon Zoo, his role, besides physically assisting in the evacuations, was to notify survivors of the times in which the helicopters would arrive. He and a colleague, Arthur, were later encountered by survivors outside of Jack's bar. Armed with a shotgun and aiding fellow RPD officer Kevin Ryman and other survivors through the alleyways adjacent to the bar, upon reaching a canal banking, he was overwhelmed by the infected. He told the group to set off a nearby fuel tank to escape and left his lighter for them to use before being killed. Yoko Suzuki, Yoko calls herself a university student and she is very knowledgeable about computers. She has a quiet and reserved personality, but the strength of her inquisitive mind emerges with a toughness that surprises. However, once she gets hung up on something, she's a bit slow on the uptake with other things.